السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين Muhammad بن Abdullah wa alihi sahbihi ajma'in. Amma ba'd. Yesterday, the Sunday, the 4th of Dhul-Qa'dah, 1437, August 7th, 2016, with the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we started the first session talking about aspects of the biography, the life of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, relying mainly on the sealed nectar book, Kitab Al-Rahiq Al-Makhtoom. We talked a little bit introduction about the book, and then a bit of background about the Arabs before the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then we left with Abdulmuttalib, the grandfather of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So eventually Abdulmuttalib became the leader and the president, the master of Quraysh at that time, and two important significant incidents happened during his leadership. One of them is digging Bi'r Zamzam, the well of Zamzam, and the other one is Abraha, the army with elephants, who came, the one came from Yemen. So for the first one, Abdulmuttalib saw in his, while he's sleeping, saw a dream. He was shown the site of Zamzam, and he was ordered to dig and bring the Bi'r of Zamzam. Because up until that time, we didn't talk about that, but years before Quraysh, there was a tribe living in Mecca along with Ismail alayhi salam and his mother Hajar, called Jurhum. And this tribe, Jurhum, was departed from Mecca by another tribe. So before they left Mecca, they buried everything. They buried Zamzam, and they also threw some swords and other things in Bi'r of Zamzam, and they buried it completely. So no one knew about Bi'r Zamzam, the well of Zamzam. So Abdulmuttalib started to dig where he was shown the site of Zamzam when he was asleep, and he found the things that Jurhum, this tribe, put in Zamzam, swords and shields, Droughts, وغزالين من ذهب, 2 deers of gold. So he took those things and put it in Kaaba, and then the water of Zamzam started coming up. Now Quraysh wanted to have partnership with Abdulmuttalib for Zamzam. He refused. He said, this is something unique for me, this is something special for me. No way that you can be partner with me. So they disputed the matter with him, and eventually they agreed to go to a lady, they call it Kahina. Kahin or Kahina is a person who claims knowing the unseen, al-ghayb. People who say, you know, this will happen in the future, and so on. So they claim they have a special power or a special way to know those things. So there was Kahina Bani Sa'ad, Kahina of tribe of Bani Sa'ad. They decided to go to that lady, and she will judge. On their way to that lady, their water finished. The water they use for drinking is gone. So they need water, right? Allah Azza wa Jal poured rain only on Abdulmuttalib. Other people beside him, or other people with him in that trip, didn't have a single drop of rain. So Quraysh realized, believed, you know what? It's indeed, that's a sign from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that this is, Zamzam is special for Abdulmuttalib. So they didn't even go further to that lady, they just came back to Mecca and accepted to leave Zamzam for Abdulmuttalib. So Abdulmuttalib, to show his appreciation to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he made a very serious, solemn vow. Nadhara nadhran. He said, if Allah gives me 10 boys and they reach the age of defending me, يبلغوا أن يمنعوه, they reach the age of defending him, he will take one of them and slaughter him beside Kaaba. That's the seriousness of the vow that he made. We'll talk what happened in a bit. Now the second incident is Abraha. All of us know Surah Al-Fil. What happened? So the king of Ethiopia back then had appointed someone called Abraha to lead Yemen. And Abraha saw Arabs go all the time to make Hajj in Mecca. So he wanted to deviate them from Mecca and do Hajj in Yemen. So in Sana'a, the capital of Yemen nowadays, he built a huge church because he wanted Arab to make pilgrimage Hajj to that church. So a man from Bani Kinana, a tribe called Bani Kinana, realized his motive. What did this man do? Under the cover of night, night, dark, there are no lights, no electricity, nothing, right? So under the cover of the night, he went inside the church, went to the front wall, Qiblat al-Kanisa, the front wall of the church, and he smeared feces on that wall. And he left, obviously. So next day, Abraha got enraged. How come this happened? So he made the military decision of going to Mecca and demolish Kaaba. And he prepared an army of 60,000. Now 60,000 at that time is enormous, huge number. The biggest army that Prophet ﷺ had in Fath Mecca, as we will talk about later, when he went to conquest Mecca, was 10,000 people. Abraha had 60,000. So it was, for Mecca, it was a tsunami, basically. No way that they could even come near to it. Not only that, he had with him in the army 9 to 13 elephants. And elephants were not known to Arabs, right? Big, scary animals. So really, very, very, very terrifying situation for Arabs. So he marched to Mecca. He arrived at an area called Al-Mughammas. He stopped there. He prepared his army, prepared the elephants, and then moved towards Mecca, which was in the west direction, until they reach a valley called Wadi Muhassir, the valley of Muhassir, between Arafah and Muzdalifah. And subhanallah, the elephant, once it reached there, obviously he wanted the elephant to destroy the Kaaba, right? So once the elephant reached there, it kneeled down. Didn't move 1 centimeter. Whenever they direct the elephant to north or east or south, the elephant will go running. When they direct the elephant to Kaaba direction, it kneels down, it doesn't move. It's a protection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. People of Mecca, when they knew about Abraha coming, they fled. They fled the city. They could not stand it. They didn't want to be killed by Abraha, and they have no means to defend the Kaaba, so they just went to the mountain, because back then Kaaba used to be surrounded by mountains, so they just went to the mountains watching what will happen to Abraha. Because all of them, even though they were in shirk, but they know that this is the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No way to play with it, no way to disturb it. So in that time when the elephant refused to go to destroy the Kaaba, Allah Azza wa Jal, as we know from the Quran, sent Tayran Ababil. He sent those birds who have burning stones in their beak and legs, and they throw it on the army. The army was shattered, basically. Many of them killed. Abraha himself, some of his fingers got amputated, and he was taken to Sana'a, where he was at, which is the capital of Yemen nowadays, very sick, and he stayed there short time, then he died. So that was the second incident that happened in or during Abdulmuttalib's life. Now Abdulmuttalib was given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala many sons, I think 10 sons, or maybe a little bit more, and few daughters as well. One of those sons was Abdullah, the father of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Abdullah was was the most beloved son to him, to Abdulmuttalib. So when they got old enough, in one of the narrations, he told them about his vow, his nadr. I had the vow to slaughter one of you beside the Kaaba. And none of them disagreed. They accepted that and waiting for him to do that. So he did a lottery, qur'ah, and whom came in that lottery to be slaughtered? Any guess? Abdullah, the most beloved son to him. So that was obviously troubling for Abdulmuttalib, right? So in one of the narrations, he wanted to, he became ready. He got him and wanted to slaughter him beside the Kaaba. So people of Quraysh and maternal uncles of Abdullah, his mother's brothers, said, hold on, hang on, what are you doing here? He said, well, I have this nadr, I have to do it. Like, I am in trouble. I made the nadr, I must fulfill it, right? So eventually they suggested to him to go to Kahina, again, another lady who does the you know those people who do the psychic here? So the same thing. So, fortune teller. Go there and let's see what she thinks. So she gave the suggestion, said, do the lottery, either to slaughter Abdullah or to slaughter 10 camels. If it comes to camels, then go ahead, slaughter those camels. If it turns to be Abdullah, then put another 10 camels and keep repeating the thing over and over and over and over. So he kept repeating until it reaches 100 camels. Then the lorry came to slaughter the camels, so he slaughtered all the 100 camels. Now, brothers, camels back then, in those days, were the most precious kind of money for Arabs. That's why the Prophet ﷺ says, لَأَنْ يَهْدِيَ اللَّهُ بِكَ رَجُلًا وَاحِدًا خَيْرٌ لَكَ مِنْ حُمْرِ النَّعَمِ. If Allah guides someone on your hands, it's best for you than Humr al-Na'am is a special type of camels. That precious. And it's a huge number because we'll talk about it in Ghazwat Badr. In Ghazwat Badr, the Sahaba captured 2 people from Quraysh army before the battle. They captured him and Prophet ﷺ captured them, both of them. The Prophet ﷺ asked them, how many is the army? How many people there in the army? They said, we don't know. So the Prophet ﷺ asked him, how many camels they slaughter a day to feed the army, right? They need to feed the army. They said they slaughter between 9 to 10 camels a day. So the Prophet ﷺ said, then the army is between 900 and 1,000. So 10 camels, 10,000 people. 100 camels, how many people? You count. So it was a huge amount of meat, and when those camels were slaughtered, like basically Abdulmuttalib let them free for anyone. No, لا يرد عنها إنسان ولا سبعا. He did not forbid any animal or human from having their meal from that camels. And subhanallah, before that incident, the money for mistaken death, diyatul qatl al-khata. We know when someone kills someone by mistake, the killer doesn't get killed, but rather will pay something, right? So before that incident, the diya used to be 10 camels. But because of that incident, the tradition became 100 camels. And according to Sheikh Safir Rahman Barakfuri, the one who wrote the Rahiq al-Makhtoum, Islam kept that tradition. That in Islam, the diya, if someone kills someone by mistake, must pay what is equivalent to 100 camels. So that was the story of Abdullah, and that's why it's narrated that the Prophet ﷺ said, "Ana ibn al-dhabihain." I'm the son of the slaughtered 2. And whom he meant by the 2 slaughtered? Any guess? Ismail alayhi salam and Abdullah, his father, right? Then Abdullah got old, so his father, Abdulmuttalib, chose to him the most honorable lady back then in Quraysh, Amina bint Wahab, to be his wife. the mother of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. So he got married to Amina. Short after, he left for a trade in Medina, and Amina got pregnant with our beloved Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. In Medina, Abdullah died, and Prophet ﷺ was still in the womb of his mother. Obviously, it was shocking for his wife. And then she delivered Muhammad ﷺ. When she delivered Muhammad ﷺ, she sent to his grandfather Abdulmuttalib to tell him, you've got a grandson. So he came happily, mustabshiran, he was happy, and he took him and he got him inside Kaaba, and he thanked Allah Azza wa Jal and made dua to Allah Azza wa Jal for having such a grandson, and he named him Muhammad. And that name Muhammad was not known to Arabs. Arabs did not use to name Muhammad. That was so probably the Prophet ﷺ was the first one to be called Muhammad. Then on the 7th day he was circumcised, the Prophet ﷺ, which was the tradition back in Arabs. Arabs used to have the tradition of sending their babies to the Bedouins to be away from the diseases of the cities, and also to have a better physical health and to have a better language. So this was one of the really touching stories in the life of the Prophet ﷺ. The story of Halimah Alsaadiah. And before we get to Halimah Alsaadiah, the first lady who suckled Prophet ﷺ was Thuwayba. Thuwayba was a slave to Abu Lahab. Abu Lahab, his uncle, is paternal uncle of the Prophet ﷺ, and obviously was one of the worst enemies to the Prophet ﷺ, as we will see later. He was, because the Prophet ﷺ was suckled by Thuwayba, Mawlatu Abi Lahab, whom she also suckled Hamza ibn Talib. That's why Hamza ibn Talib is the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ, but also his brother in milk, أخوه بالرضاعة. Now let's give the mic to Halimah Alsaadiah to tell us the story of what happened. Subhanallah. Allahumma salli wa sallam ala Rasulillah. Halimah Alsaadiah said, we were in Sanatun Shahba, drought, famine, tough year for them, no rain, nothing. And then Halima, with a group of women, went to Mecca seeking babies, to get babies and suckle them, and obviously return them back to their own families. So the group went to Mecca. Halima, her husband, and they have a young baby. And Halima was riding Atan. Atan is the female donkey. And they also had Sharif. Sharif is she camel, or a female camel. And because it was really tough year, drought and famine, their camel, their female donkey was so weak that even the Al-Rakb, the people that they were going to with the group, they felt like distressed and bad and almost were disappointed with having Halima with them, because not because of Halima, but because that Atan was so slow, so weak, couldn't walk fast. And the Sharif, the she camel or the Naqa, had no single drop of milk. And Halima and her husband, for nights in a row, were unable to sleep. Didn't have a wink of sleep. Why? Because their young baby was just crying non-stop, hungry. Halima said, I had nothing in my breast to feed him and nothing in our she camel. So that's why the baby was hungry all the time. Allah musta'an. Now they arrived Mecca. And Halima says, none of the women was offered the Prophet ﷺ and accepted him. Woman would say, an orphan? What would his mother or grandfather provide us with? They were looking for a baby who has a father, because the father will pay them something, right? Will give them something. But an orphan, what an orphan can give? Or his mother or his father, grandfather, what they can give? So all the women refused to pick up Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And every one of them picked up a baby, except Halimah Alsaadiah. Now when the time of departure came, Halimah Alsaadiah told her husband, by Allah, I hate go back amongst my colleagues and I did not pick up any baby. By Allah, I will go and pick up that orphan and will take him. So her husband said, لا عليك أن تفعلي. There is no harm of doing that. عسى الله أن يجعل لنا فيه بركة. May Allah give us blessing or have a blessing in him, that baby. Subhanallah. She went and picked up the Prophet ﷺ. Now, let's pause a second. Halimah Alsaadiah came from a famine and drought and tough year, right? She had no breast to feed her own baby, no breast milk to feed her own baby. Their camel has no single drop of milk. Tough year, they couldn't sleep for nights in a row. Listen what happened. فلما وضعته في حج... Now, she says, فلما أخذته رجعت به إلى رحلي. When I took him, I went back to our place. So, you know, every family were sitting in a place, spending the night, because next morning they will take off and go back home, right? فلما أخذته رجعت به إلى رحلي. I took him back to our place. فلما وضعته في حجري. When I put him in my lap. أقبل عليه ثدياي بما شاء من لبن. My breasts, both breasts, not only one, both breasts, poured with milk. فشرب حتى روى. And he drank, the Prophet ﷺ drank until he was full. وشرب معه أخوه حتى روى. And his brother also drank until he was full. Then they both slept. And we didn't used to sleep before that. This is the blessed. Allahumma salli wa sallam. He was blessed as young as a baby. Allahumma salli wa sallam alayhi. Allahumma salli wa sallam ala Rasulullah. Then my husband went to our camel, and to our astonishment, she was full of milk. So he milked the camel, and both my husband and I drank until we were full. فبتنا بخير ليلة. We slept in one of our best nights. اللهم صل وسلم على رسول الله. When it was the morning, her husband told her, you know what, Halima? By Allah, you got a blessed child. Because they saw. Miraculous, right? So she said, Wallahi inni la arju dhalik. By Allah, I hope that. Not only that, then the group start moving back to their back home, Diyar Bani Sa'd. So she took Prophet ﷺ with her on the female atan, right? فوالله لقطعت بالركب ما لا يقدر عليه شيء من حمرهم. I went the first. None of the donkeys or horses in the group was able even to catch my atan, my female donkey. The same donkey that was weak and slow when they were going to Mecca. Even a woman would say, يَبْنَةَ أَبِي ذُؤَيْبٍ, the daughter of Abi Dhu'ayb, وَيْحَكِ, what's up? Hang on. Isn't this the same donkey that you had with you when you were coming to Mecca? She said, yes. Bala wallah, indeed, by Allah. It is the same camel. Obviously, the difference is the Prophet ﷺ. Then they went to their place, their country. Again, continued to be very drought and famine, tough year. The sheep of Halima would go in the morning with a shepherd and come back in the evening full of milk. And no one else sheep has a single drop of milk. Even other people would shout at their shepherd and say, "Wayhakum, what's wrong with you? Go and feed your sheep from the same place that the sheep of Halima is feeding, the same grass. Go there." Still the same thing. Only Halimah Alsaadiah's sheep is full of milk, and others nothing, no even a single drop of milk. So she says, فَلَمْ نَزَلْ نَتَعَرَّفْ مِنَ اللَّهِ الزِّيَادَةَ وَالْخَيْرِ. We continue to see blessings and increase from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because they have that blessed baby, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, until he became almost 2 years. So they got him back to his mom. But they really wanted to keep him with them because of the barakah they saw, right? So, you know, his mom is a mother, right? She didn't see him for 2 years, so she obviously wants to keep him. So they kind of convinced her and persuaded her, if you keep your son with us until his health become really strong, you know, we are worried about waba Mecca, an infection in Mecca that's going on, he might get affected. And they continued negotiating with her until she eventually gave in and said, okay, take him back. So they took him back again for another 2 years. Until he was 4, and there was a significant incident that made Halimah Alsaadiah to decide to get him back to his mother. Khalas, he must go back to his mother. It's very scary and risky to keep him with me. And this story was narrated in Muslim, so it's authentic hadith. When he was 4 years old, he was playing with other boys, and Jibreel alayhi salam came down while he was playing with the boys, and he took him, and he opened his chest and took his heart out, the heart of the Prophet ﷺ. فاستخرج منه علقة. He took a clot of blood from that heart. فقال هذا حظ الشيطان منك. This is what is related for shaitan. This clot is related to shaitan. He took it out from him. Then he washed the heart in a basin of gold, طست من ذهب, that was filled with Zamzam. Then after washing it, he put the heart back in his chest and closed the chest. Now other boys were terrified and went running to their mom, to his mom in milk, or Halimah Alsaadiah, and told her, Muhammad was killed. Muhammad was murdered. Come and see him. Muhammad was murdered. So they came and saw him. Muntaqi al-lawn. His face color was changed out of terror and fear. Then Anas radiallahu anhu said, وَقَدْ كُنْتُ أَرَى أَثَرَ ذَلِكَ الْمِخِض فِي صَدْرِهِ. And I used to see the scar in his chest. After that happened, Halima said, you know what? It's too risky to keep Muhammad ﷺ, so she sent him back to his mother. He stayed with his mom until he got to the age of 6 years old. Then his mom decided to visit the grave of her husband, the Prophet ﷺ's father, in Medina. So they went there. They stayed in Medina for a month. They visited the grave. On their way back, there was an area called Al-Abwa. There is an area called Al-Abwa between Mecca and Medina. She got very sick and she died. Now the Prophet ﷺ, instead of being orphan and missing his dad only, he missed now dad and mom. What a tough situation for the Prophet ﷺ. So his grandfather Abdulmuttalib became so compassionate for him, so loving for him, and felt so bad for him that he missed his dad, now he's missing his mom. And Abdulmuttalib used to favor Muhammad ﷺ amongst his own sons, the Prophet's uncles. Not only that, Abdulmuttalib was the leader of Quraysh, right? Was the master of Quraysh. So they used to put a mattress for him in the shade of Kaaba, and all of his sons would sit around the mattress waiting for him to come out. No one would touch that mattress or sit on it out of respect to Abdulmuttalib. Not only respect, haybatan wajlalan. Hayba wajlal in Arabic, it's a respect that is mixed with some sort of fear and some sort of fear. But the Prophet ﷺ, youngster boy, would come all the way and sit on that mattress. So his ankles would pull him away. How come? You know, this is a mattress of the chief. Abdulmuttalib used, when he sees them pulling or taking Prophet ﷺ away, he would say, "Da'u ibni hada," leave him. Don't pull him away. Wallahi inna lahu lasha'na. By Allah, he's got something. He's got a position. He's got something important. And he would put him beside him, and he stroke his back and express his empathy and love to the Prophet ﷺ. Maybe a year or so after that, Abdulmuttalib died. So who took care of the Prophet ﷺ? His uncle, Abu Talib. And as we will know later, Abu Talib continued to provide the utmost maximum protection to the Prophet ﷺ until he passed away. Even though Abu Talib did not become Muslim, he provided the Prophet ﷺ with the maximum protection and help. So Abu Talib now became the caregiver of the Prophet ﷺ. One day, Mecca was hit with famine and drought, no rain. And as we know, back then people rely solely and only on rain, right? Because when there is rain, there is grass and animals could feed and so on. If there is no rain, it used to be a real disaster. So Abu Talib took the Prophet ﷺ, took him and attached the back of the Prophet ﷺ to the Kaaba and made istisqa, and all of a sudden there was no cloud in the sky. Then all of a sudden the sky became very cloudy and rain was poured. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Not only that, as we know, Quraysh used to have trips of trade to Sham. They go to Sham, Syria and that area for trade and business. Until they arrived an area called Busra. In that area there used to be a monk, Rahib. We know monk, they do nothing except worship. All. That Rahib used not to care about those Arabs. But when they arrived, Abu Talib took with him the Prophet ﷺ. When they arrived, that monk left his place and جعل يتخللهم. He started moving amongst the Arabs until he got to the Prophet ﷺ, and he held his hand high and he said, هذا سيد العالمين. This is the master of people. هذا رسول رب العالمين. This is the messenger of the Lord of people. هذا يبعثه الله رحمة العالمين. Allah will send him mercy for people. So Abu Talib and elders of Quraysh told him, how come you know that? How did you know that? فقال, when you came from Aqaba, a place called Aqaba, there was no stone or tree except it felt sujood for the Prophet ﷺ. And they only make sujood to a prophet. And I know him by the Prophethood seal below his shoulder. Prophet ﷺ used to have a Prophethood seal, almost like a size of apple, below his shoulder. And as we will see later, Salman al-Farsi radallahu anh, when he was in Medina and he heard about the Prophet coming to Medina, he wanted to make sure that is he the true prophet or not, and he did few things. One of them, he brought him sadaqah. Prophet ﷺ did not take the sadaqah. Then he brought him hadiyah or gift. He accepted the hadiyah gift, and also he tried to indirectly go to the back of the Prophet ﷺ. So Prophet ﷺ kind of let his rida, his clothes fell off, and he saw the seal of prophethood. Then Buhayra, that monk, told Abu Talib, you know what? I'm really worried about the Jews and Romans in Sham. They would hurt him. So get him back to Mecca. And then he got him back to Mecca. Quraysh one of the things that happened during the Prophet ﷺ life before he became a prophet, there was Harbul Fijar, or sacrilegious war, a war that happened during Al-Ashhur Al-Hurum. We know there were 4 months that Arab used to glorify, and no war happened in those months. But for some reasons, a war happened in that month, so that's why it's called Harb al-Fijar. And the Prophet ﷺ role in that war was only to provide his ankles with a nibble, the arrows to use in that war. Another incident was the Hilf al-Fudhol, or confederacy of Al-Fudhol. Basically what happened, a person from a tribe called Zubayd came to Mecca. He's got merchandise. He sold it to a person called Al-As bin Wa'il al-Sahmi, but that person did not pay him back, did not give him anything. So that man from Zubayd talked to various people, they ignored him. He wanted his money, he ignored him. So he went to a mountain called Jabal Abi Qubays and made a poetry talking about the oppression that he got exposed to. So eventually, Zubayr bin Abdulmuttalib asked people of Quraysh to make an alliance or covenants to help anyone who is oppressed in Mecca. Like a rule, if anyone gets oppressed, we must walk with that and help that oppressed person until he gets his money or whatever he lost back. So we'll stop at here, and inshallah ta'ala we'll continue tomorrow. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.